All right, fellas. Babyface or heel? One of my favorite topics on the Sports PSP pod. Now, for those who may not know what babyface heel means, babyface, heel in wrestling terminology, babyface means good guy hero, heel means bad guy villain. Tweener is someone in between babyface and heel. So I come up with a list of athletes or celebrities, and myself and the panel are going to decide whether they are a babyface or a heel. First one, and I will go first. Colin Kaepernick. He's a tweener. There are going to be those who say heel because of the position he took with the national anthem. Although he made it abundantly clear it was never about the military men and women. It had to do with the injustices, the inequities that has been going on. Philando Castile, Freddie Gray, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor. The list goes on and on. So that was the issues that he was bringing up. But there's going to be a certain group of people, certain networks, particularly Fox Sports, still say Colin Kaepernick was disrespecting the flag, the national anthem, the military men and women. Even though I find it weird because, wait a minute, correct me if I'm wrong, Champ, didn't Marshawn Lynch sat during the national anthem, correct me if I'm wrong, during a Super Bowl against New England Patriots?
Mm-hmm.
But no outrage with that. So and that's a nationally televised game. No bigger stage than the Super Bowl. So I don't understand that. Now he's also going to be considered a heel because again, Miami. Reason why the Miami Dolphins did not bring him in and they brought in Jay Cutler, not because Jay Cutler and Adam Gase they were tight going back to their days in Chicago. Colin Kaepernick did wear a Fidel Castro t-shirt. And if
Yeah.
you Google history about Fidel Castro, he was a dictator to his own people. Why Cubans had to go to Miami. There are a lot of Cubans who live around Miami, and they were very upset with Colin Kaepernick wearing a Fidel Castro t-shirt. Then also Baltimore. And I brought up the example, champ, for Babyface here regarding Ray Lewis. His girlfriend at the time, now wife, Nessa, posted a picture on Twitter depicting Steve Buscemi, the owner of the Baltimore Ravens, and Ray Lewis, the Hall of Fame football player, of the characters from Quentin Tarantino's movie Django Unchained. In the case with Steve Buscemi, she depicted him as Leonardo DiCaprio's character, Calvin, the slave owner. And in the case of Ray Lewis, she depicted him as Samuel L. Jackson's character, Stephen, the Uncle Tom or the house slave. But he's also a babyface because again, because of bringing awareness to all these things, the sacrifice, the price that he had to pay. I mean, remember all the money to what was it to Singola champ?
Mm-hmm.
All the donations, the position that he's taking. Remember, didn't he? Wasn't he on Time Magazine for Person of the Year?
Yes, he
So
was.
So when you look at his contributions, his philanthropy, you know, him bringing awareness to all these issues, I have to say he's a tweener. He is polarizing. Same thing with Kyrie Irving. He's polarizing as well. So I think Colin Kaepernick is polarizing because he's polarizing. I would say he is a tweener because there's going to be those who feel like what he did by not taking the position with the flag, the national anthem, they still look at it as disrespect. But at the same time, he told you it wasn't about the military men and women. It was about the injustices that has been going on in this country and that the unarmed men and women haven't been held accountable. Those were the issues that Colin Kaepernick was addressing. So, and also to another example was the workout back in 2019. Remember, the reason why Colin Kaepernick, they wanted him to sign a waiver chip. Had he signed that waiver, he would have relinquished his right in taking any legal action against the NFL. Mike Florio from Pro Football Sports talked about it. He said it himself, malpractice. ESPN's Howard Bryant, the senior writer, even spoke about it. He even did it. He even said it on Outside the Lines. So when I take everything into consideration with Colin Kaepernick, I would say tweener. Whoever wants to go.
All right. I will set the tone. I will say he is a tweener. He is a tweener. Look, there was a lot of controversy that was going on. It was a lot. And it really hit home for me because, hey, someone who was close to me had a problem with that. That person was my father. If you do not know this, I, myself, and my father are both combat veterans. He had a problem with it. Him being the old school guy that he was. Me personally, I was like, hey, he earned the right. We fought for the right for him to do that. Long as you don't, in my humble opinion, me being who I am, especially back then, it was like as long as you didn't do something degrading to the flag, I had no problem with you kneeling. Plus, it was a military veteran's idea for him to kneel.
Nate Boyer, he said, instead of sitting, why don't you take a knee?
Yeah, because and kneeling is not necessarily a bad thing. You kneel when you propose. When they knight you, you kneel. And like I said, a military veteran gave him that idea. So if a military veteran gave you that idea in order to do so, then hey, not to mention Jesse Ventura also came out and backed him up. If you don't know who Jesse Ventura is, retired WWE Hall of Famer and a Navy SEAL and former governor of Minnesota. He himself stated that he repoed a bill that required young kids to stand up in the classroom when the pledge came on. He immediately vetoed that bill because he said that the country should not mandate patriotism; they should earn patriotism. So I say that he's a tweener because, hey, I don't have any problem with you kneeling. I had no problem with you. Like I said, I'm a military veteran myself. A military veteran gave you that idea. You have the right to express yourself. You have the right to the freedom of speech. You have the right to protest. And I understand the cause that he was behind. At times, I felt as though it got out of hand. You wearing the socks.
You mean the one with the police officers depicted as pigs?
Yes, I was trying to avoid that, but yeah. But
No, I'm just being honest, champ.
yeah, you know me. I try to be as PC as possible. Like I said, this show it's for the kids too. But you wearing the socks. What was you getting? What was you accomplishing by doing that? Because once you put those socks on, that's gonna label you as a cop hater.
Not to mention him wearing the Kunta Kinte t-shirt during the workouts.
Yeah, not to mention you wearing the Kuta Kente t-shirt when you doing the workouts. Just a lot of other things that it had gotten too out of hand. Then the documentary came out with you comparing NFL players to slaves. So it was a lot of things that, although I agreed with him about the kneeling part, there was also a lot of things that I really just like, are you serious? Not to mention, it's just like, it's kind of like what the late great George Foreman used to do. Like once every year, you'll hear about the George Foreman watch. You remember that BRF in the early 2000s? Like once every year, you'll hear about the George Foreman watch. I'm gonna come back if my wife let me, and I'm gonna fight one more fight.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And every year, it's like the Colin Kaepernick watch, when it's just like that ship has sailed. Now, don't get me wrong. I admire a lot of the things that he had done. I admire the kneeling. Guess what? You have a right to do that. I admire the fact that a lot of people don't acknowledge this. He actually donated a lot of money to the Black Veterans Association.
Mm-hmm.
He actually donated a lot of money to the Black Veterans Association. He really did. He was working with the kids. He held camps. He went to go visit with a lot of leaders around the world. So I admire a lot of things of that nature. But there's a lot of things that you should have done that could have. There's a lot of things that you did was kind of anticlimactic. Wearing the socks, that's anticlimactic. Because the thing is, you wearing socks like that is going to lead a lot of people to think that you're trying to incite violence on law enforcement. Because the people used to call the cops what you had on your socks. So that's going to lead a lot of people like, what are you trying to say? You're saying you're kneeling for justice, but at the same time, you have those socks on. So what point are you really trying to drive home? Then you had the Fidel Castro t-shirt that you had on. Now, one thing people don't realize is that Malcolm X met with Fidel Castro.
1960.
Yes, he did. But you have to understand where you're going. You're in Miami. You got to read the room. You're in Miami.
Cuban population. Big one.
Yes, you have to read the room. Read the room. And the thing is, what I didn't like about that situation is Ray Lewis was kind of made out to be a villain, but the thing was, behind the scene, he was campaigning for him to come to Baltimore.
And then his girlfriend at the time, Nessa, with the tweet, as I mentioned.
Yes. He said, I disagree with him because I have military people in my family. But guess what? I campaigned and talked to, because, Ray Lewis had a lot of clout in that organization. Remember,
17 years with the organization, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, Ring of Honor, Hall of Fame. Yes. Sorry to interrupt you, Champ, but as you always say, great minds think alike.
Yes, not to mention, guess what? He was able to talk to the owner in order to bring Deion Sanders out of retirement when Deion Sanders was looking to come back and play football. Deion Sanders had a Pro Bowl year at 37 years old. Thank Ray Lewis. So, he was trying to campaign in order to get him back out there. But after that picture posted, it's like, nah, I'm good. After that, after you just insulted me, you disrespected me like that, and you didn't come out and say, hey, that's not a reflection of what I think. I'm trying to play football. So there's a lot of things that I agree with. I think he did a lot of great things, donated to the Veterans Association, made a stance that was not very, very popular, was able to sacrifice his career in order to do that. I admire that. But there was so many things that I felt that was anticlimactic that at certain times it's just like, I see the point you're trying to make, but if you're trying to play football, then you're playing yourself all at the same time. It's like you wearing the socks, anticlimactic. You wearing the t-shirt, anticlimactic. You wearing the Kunta Kinte shirt, doing the workouts, anticlimactic. You suing the NFL, but at the same time, not being humble enough in order to come back. Like, Eric Reed did. Eric Reed also sued the NFL. People don't even mention him anymore. He also sued, but he was able to come back. Now they drug tested him every single game, but he came back and had a pretty decent career towards the end. And you never heard it, and you never heard about anything else again, even after he sued. The settlement the ink was dry on the settlement and everything. And after that, you never heard another peep out of it. But there was so much stuff that was going on that was anticlimactic that kind of like hurt his cause at the end of it and kind of made him seem like more of a rebel than just a person standing up for a cause. It just kind of like made you look at him kind of different a little bit, because it's just like, we want to see you play, but you're doing every single thing that you can in order to block yourself from playing.
Will you agree with me, Champ, that had it not been for the position that he took with the flag, he probably would have been on an NFL roster. Because look, some people say, well, it's his play. It's his play as anything. His play was the reason why he was still not on an NFL roster. We had this conversation on your pod, champ.
Yeah.
Remember, Nathan Peterman. And you
Yeah.
even said it yourself. Let me put my fat face in. Let me tell you, Nathan Peterman, what was his numbers his very first start?
And he 1 for 14, 3 interceptions. Damn. I could have did better than that. Shit. I'm just being real. But you could have threw a shuffle pass. I'd have shuffle passed the whole damn game in order for me not to do that. But the thing was, like I said, I don't think it. Like I said, I don't think it was so much as the kneeling because a lot of guys came back from that.
It was
Malcolm
the other
Jenkins.
things that came along with it.
Yes, people don't like to acknowledge a lot of things. Eric Reed came back even after he sued and won the lawsuit. He still paid for 2-3 more years. But it's just a lot of things that I feel like that he did was so anticlimactic that people just said, you know what, this is too much damn drama. I'm not going to deal with this. And they have the right to say that. It's their business. But it's like Eric, like I said, Eric Reed was allowed to come back even after the lawsuit, even after that. The Carolina Panthers brought him back for 2-3 more years. And he got drug tested every game, which, hey, they going to pick at you. They going to nibble at you just a little bit.
Especially for someone like him, they're going to put a target on your back.
Yeah. But he was able to play for the next another few years. And every once in a while, you would hear him in an interview about the kneeling and things that's going on. But outside of that, you really didn't see the antics. It wasn't the kneeling so much as the antics. That's what people got to realize. It wasn't the kneeling because so many guys came back from that. Eric Reed, Malcolm Jenkins, just to name a few. It was just the antics behind it that kind of made it so anticlimactic that you just questioned it. It's like, why do you keep? It's just like we want to see you play football. And if you want to play, then guess what? You have to put yourself in the best position in order to do so. But a lot of things were just so anticlimactic. It was just too much. And like I said, every year you hear about these. We just heard it last week about, he's still working out. I mean, that ship has sailed. You got a better chance. You got a better chance in the NFL right about now. I got to be an amateur boxing champion again. So I put him as a tweener because
yeah,
he was good. I agree. Like I said, I agree. I like what he did, but it was so much other stuff that was so anticlimactic that it's just like it's becoming a circus now.
I also think it lost attention to what Kaepernick was trying to convey. Because again, we talked about all the other things with Kaepernick instead of what actually Kaepernick was actually discussing.
Yeah.
But I do think he is a tweener. Because I mean, he is polarizing. I mean, he is provocative, but I do think there's a lot of good with Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah.
So BRF, what are your thoughts?
Safe to say Colin Kaepernick is one of the 5 most polarizing figures in sports over the last quarter century.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's definitely a tweener. And I mean, it's pretty much with Colin Kaepernick, you draw the line. It's pretty much, if you support him, we know what side of the spectrum you're on. If you don't support him, we pretty kind of know what side of the spectrum you're on. I mean, it's one of those things where it's just like I definitely supported him with what he did as far as like bringing attention to police brutality. Bringing attention to something that needed the attention, that needed to be spoke on, that really needed to slow down and really needed to stop. And I think I think he lost a lot of his luster with with the way his behavior and all that stuff as far as like the NFL and wanting to get back to play. Because I mean, come on, man. Everybody with common sense know the NFL blackballed that man. I mean,
Yeah,
anybody with common sense know. Anybody with common sense know the NFL was not going to let him back in and play after all that stuff went down and everything. Anybody with common sense knows that. Yeah, just but just some of the thing. If you're trying to, yeah, like y'all made a lot of good points. Y'all pretty much nailed, like, hit a lot of those points on the head. It's like if you're trying to do something, you can't have, you can't have other outside factors like dictate how people feel about you if you're trying to bring attention to something that really needed the attention. But Champ brought, y'all brought up the socks. The tweet from it was, his now wife at the time, and just so many things that occurred on his watch that really could have been prevented and really could have helped him as far as to continuing to expand and shine a light on something that needed that needed to shine. So his how polarizing it was. Yeah, he was too polarizing to really not be a tweener, because I mean, let's face it. I mean, it's obvious. Us being who we are. And it's kind of obvious how we felt about Colin Kaepernick when everything was going down, when he first started taking knees and all that. And I think, and at the time, I just thought it was funny. So many people were coming down on him as far as kneeling during the national anthem, forgetting that shout out to Nate Boyer, Green, Army, Green Beret. He was the one that like said, you know what, hey, we kneel for our fallen soldiers or our fallen compadres. We kneel for them. When they die. It shows respect. Don't sit, but take a knee, because at the end of the day, because you're still. He told him, you're still showing respect for those fallen veterans by taking a knee, because that we did that. So I feel like you should do that. And it's like it was unfortunate that all it was unfortunate that people kind of came out and were still just saying, "Oh, he's disrespecting the flag, he disrespecting the military," when a legit Army Ranger was like, "No, he's not disrespecting the military. If anything, he's showing respect, because that's what we did. That's what we did to fallen soldiers. That's what we did with our fellow brothers. That's what we did." And a lot
yeah.
of that was unfortunate. He just he could have played his hand a lot better with certain situations. He like at this point, it is good that he's training and that he's keeping himself in shape. I admire that, but nobody's gonna let you. Nobody's gonna sign you at this point. Nobody's gonna sign you. I mean, at this point, if somebody was to sign you, you would be. It's unfortunate, but I mean, you would be nothing more than a charity case at this point. So that ship's definitely set on him playing. But yeah, he's a tweener. I mean, like I said, he's one of the most polarizing figures. He's got to be, for me, top 5 polarizing figures of the last quarter century in sports, with the attention that he brought onto himself, but yet what he was trying to do, and how you had one half, when you had one side that was all for him and the other side just like, no, no, don't do it. So yeah, he's too polarizing of a figure to not be considered a tweener, because you have that one side that looks him as a heel, that one side that looks him as a babyface. It's one of those, like, you have it's like you got one truth here, you got one truth there, and the real truth is like kind of somewhere in the middle. That's kind of what this feels like. So yeah, Colin Kaepernick's definitely a tweener for me.
All right, next one. Philip Rivers.
And he's the baby face.
With all them damn kids that he got?
He's married. They're all by the same woman.
I know. That's why. I mean,
They're all by the same woman. I mean, we get my bad.
that's my point, Chip. Most dudes who have that many kids, they're with a lot of women. He's only with one.
Yeah, I mean, so guess what? If you never mind, but you having them all by the same.
Damn.
I'm glad I did not let that slip out, but because
I think we all glad you didn't let that slip out.
Thank God.
I'm just saying, you had them all with the same woman. So hey, you know,
Well,
people have big.
at least he ain't got to worry about being on Maury Povich.
No, he ain't got to worry about that. He ain't got to worry about Jerry Springer. He ain't got to worry about writing $1 million check. I am married. I'm worth millions. I can take care of my children. It's not like he's pulling stuff like Evander Holyfield, guys like that, where you got people all over the world. So guess what? He's married. He was a trash talker. But the thing is, how can you not like, how can you not, I mean, Phillip Rivers never did anything malicious. There's nothing anything malicious. People talk about, well, he have a lot of kids. Okay, I'm married. I have about the same woman. I love my wife. I love my children. All right. I was a beacon of hope for a franchise for so many years.
And a
Unfortunately,
Christian.
and a Christian. Like I said, man, we all love the chaos of the bad guy. We all love the chaos and the mayhem, and it's must see TV. But look, Phillip Rivers was never in the news like that. The thing is, he was good, and he was so quiet. Although he was a trash talker on the field, he was the model citizen off the field. So they had to find something in order for him to, for them to make fun of him about. And guess what? If me and my wife want to lay up and want to multiply, that's our business. We're married. We doing it the right way. I'm not out here all over the streets. I'm not for the streets. I am doing this the right way. Me and my wife have been married for years. We wanted to have a big family. I stopped playing football and I started coaching. I coach at high school now. I'm going to be a Hall of Famer. Guess what, man? Like I said, everything that we was preaching earlier about being careful, about being calculated, about, being with someone your age or being with someone who compliments you. Phillip Rivers did all of that. He did all of that. He was that guy that did everything the right way. People are going to say, well, he never won a Super Bowl, but hey, I put that more on the Chargers organization than I do him. You had no business firing Marty Schottenheimer, the late great Marty Schottenheimer, after him going 14-2. You had no business doing that. I'm fully convinced that had they kept Marty Schottenheimer, they would have won a Super Bowl because they had some of the best players money can buy. At one point, the Chargers had 12 Pro Bowlers. 12. They had Darren Sproles, Michael Turner, and LaDainian Thompson all in the same backfield. You had Vincent Jackson, the late great Vincent Jackson. You had Antonio Gates. You had a little bit of everybody on that team. Sean Merriman, Jamal Castillo, Big Igor, Sean Phillips, Donnie Edwards, Eric Weddle, Quentin Jammer, Antonio Cromartie. So I blame that more so on the dysfunction of the Chargers organization, especially back then, because they was letting A.J. Smith run amok. Then I blame that on him. Well, as far as Phillip Rivers, I always say this, man, when certain conversations come up, yeah, he was a trash talker. Guess what, man? You know what? You never heard about anything derogatory that he was saying to anybody. And he didn't take it so far where it was in the press every day. He was the cornerstone for a flagship franchise for a long time. Like I said, he has a lot of kids, but guess what? They all by the same woman. I'm married. I'm a Christian. This is my wife. We wanted a big family, and guess what? My children, I've made millions of hundreds of millions in the NFL. My children ain't got to worry about nada. So I got to put him as a baby face, man. He's an undisputed baby face, in my humble opinion.
I agree. What's so unique about Phillip Rivers, as I said it before, for him to get this far, he's also going to be in the discussions for the Hall of Fame. He has the funkiest throwing motion I've ever seen in my life, and he still delivers the ball.
Hmm.
Philip Rivers, um, I mean, hey, Chargers, they've had very good quarterback play. Dan Fouts, Drew Brees, him, now Justin Herbert. And Philip Rivers is just one of those examples of Chargers quarterbacks who they've had for a while and couldn't even win a championship. And I just hope that Justin Herbert, he turns out to be the quarterback they hoped. Because if it doesn't, then I don't know what to say with the Chargers. But Philip Rivers, I have him as a baby face. No controversy with Philip Rivers. No, I mean, he trash talks, but yeah. Also, mind the way, he's tough too. Played in an AFC championship game. The only time he played in an AFC championship game with a torn ACL.
Hmm.
Philip Rivers, fighter. Also his first and last year with the Indianapolis Colts managed to help them get to the playoffs in
Yes, he did.
2020. And the year after that, they had Carson Wentz. And it was supposed to work out for Carson Wentz in Indianapolis because of Frank Wright. And they couldn't even make the playoffs. And they lost in that last game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So at least Philip Rivers was able to do that. And you mean to tell me with Philip Rivers, with that offense that Indy has, they'd be worse off? So no. I believe Philip Rivers is a babyface. I believe he'll get into the Hall of Fame because of the numbers, the longevity. He has 8 Pro Bowl appearances. So, and also great man off the field. Also, he even took time to coach high school football.
Hmm.
So, I got to give Philip Rivers that. BRF.
Yeah, yeah. For me, yeah, it's board's unanimous. Philip Rivers is definitely a babyface, and it's funny though because you watch some of his games on TV, like you'll watch some. They'll mic him up and so they'll mic him up, and so you hear his trash talking, and you hear his trash talking, and you're kind of like, man, like how are people getting offended by how he trash talks? I mean, he's not vulgar about anything he didn't. I mean, he's not cussing at you. He's not vulgar. He just letting you, hey, he just letting you know, hey, go take a couple of seats. You're not as good as you think you are. Hey, it's it's just one of those things. And yeah, and you know what I'm saying? Philip Rivers has probably heard so many jokes about him having a bunch of kids. He still gets them. So, it's one of those things where saying we all doubt that he's worried about stuff like that. But I mean, Model Citizen never got in trouble. I mean, he beat the Indianapolis Colts in the playoffs in Indianapolis on a torn ACL. I mean, that's dedication, that's toughness, that's that's your franchise quarterback doing what he's supposed to do to help you win big games. I mean, he's one of the toughest competitors I've ever seen on a football field play ball. And you know what? Yeah, the arm motion is funky, but I tell you what, he was up there as far as like strongest arm in the league. He was up there for years. So Philip Rivers he's definitely a baby face. I mean, you can't say enough about the type of family man he is. You can't say enough about what type of football player he was, and that's one of those things that shouldn't go overlooked. He has a Hall of Fame case. He definitely has a Hall of Fame case. So yeah, I don't think I really need to elaborate on too much because y'all hit everything. Philip Rivers is a babyface.
All right, last one. Really controversial one. Brett Favre.
Oh, he's a heel now. He's a heel. He's a heel now. Um, at one point, at
He
one
was a
point,
baby
he
face. He was
one
a
of
baby
the
face.
at one point he was one of, if not the biggest baby face of the National Football League. I mean, the way he played the game, he had fun. The ultimate gunslinger. Never met an attempt he didn't like. I mean, was just he was not scared to try to fit his throws through these really tight windows, and a lot of times he would hit these windows because he's got one of the strongest arms in the history of the National Football League. But now it's like that whatever that person was and you played in the NFL, that's not you now because you. I think right now at this point in his life, he's definitely a heel because stories that have come out about you and allegations and all this other stuff, particularly with the big one, which is taking the welfare money and using it to build a volleyball stadium because his daughter was on the team. I mean, just like one of those things where it's like, yeah, a lot of that luster that you had playing in the NFL, and even still, he was polarizing then because as he got late in his career, he was like undecided as far as like whether he wanted to continue to play or not, which
And, let,
ultimately,
and let's not
which
forget the
ultimately got.
situation with the Jets.
Oh, but yeah, most definitely that too. Like the pic, the yeah, the we'll just say the pictures, like and all that. So yeah, like late in his career, it became I don't know. It became a little harder to root for him because of the scandals he was in and the undecidedness whether he wanted to continue to play or not. And now after football, all the allegations. So yeah, I mean, I think for me right now, Brett Favre is a definite heel.
Big homie champ, talk to me.
Oh man, I'll have to say heel. I gotta say heel, not just because of the allegations, but because of the way you acted on the way out of Green Bay, the way you acted on the way out of Minnesota, not knowing if you were going to retire or not. Basically, Aaron Rodgers before Aaron Rodgers. You went from being a media darling to just, it was just a lot. You had allegations of inappropriateness with a Jets employee, the text. The thing is, for guys like that, I'm pretty sure he's thinking his lucky stars their social media wasn't out back then. I'm pretty sure he's thinking because they would be on him like white on rice, a glass of milk, a paper plate in a snowstorm had it been out back then.
Especially during his time with Atlanta.
Well, the thing is, his time with Atlanta, people forgave that
They
because the
forget.
thing is, people understood.
Yeah, it's one thing, champ, to forgive someone who had problems with alcohol,
Yeah,
Vicodin addiction, those types of things. However, the situation with him and Jen Sturger, that was the female who used to work with the New York Jets.
yeah, that was the problem. Not to mention you alienating your team on the way out. I'm retiring. I don't want to retire. It's not my job to get Aaron Rodgers ready. A lot of other stuff that was going on with the team. You alienating the front office, alienating teammates. You're not so sure if you're going to show up to training camp your second year with the Minnesota Vikings. It was just a lot of things contribute to you being a heel. And then just when we thought that you had escaped, then then the allegations come out. Then you try to sue. Then you try to sue everybody for defamation of character, including someone who we talked about earlier in the show, Shannon Sharp, which the lawsuit got dismissed.
As well as Pat McAfee.
Yeah, as well as Pat McAfee. Both lawsuits dismissed. So I have to say that you're a heel at this point. Which the fall for graces of a lot of these athletes, like I said, they need to be steady. Because for you to go to be the most beloved man, Shaq was
Went to a
on
Monday night
Monday Night Football.
football. Brett Favre's, remember, that was the day in which Favre torched the Raiders one day after his father passed
Died.
away. Yeah.
Yes. Your father passed away, and we stood up and applauded you for going out there and toasting them up like grandma's toast on Sunday before church. We cheered you doing those interceptions. We cheered you for having the biggest sense of humor in the world, because the thing was, the appeal of Brett Favre is, I'm just a regular guy, the all shucks type of guy, the guy who, although you could go out here and throw for 4,000 yards a season, a guy you sit on the porch and have a beer with.
Practical joker.
Yeah. Sit around here, with your Wrangler jeans on. Hey, man, let's go get a beer. Let's ride around on the four-wheeler, man. Let's go sit by the pickup truck and, man, let's tell a few war stories here and there. That was his image at a certain point. But, unfortunately, all of that is tarnished because of everything that happened towards the end. And, hey, I'm going to give you an old saying that the late, great Lieutenant Colonel Whitley gave me right before he passed. Shout out to Lieutenant Colonel. 1,000 attaboys. You don't know what an attaboy is when they say attaboy, and they a pat on the back. 1,000 attaboys is erased by one aw shit. Remember that.
It's tough for me because growing up as a little kid, I was a diehard, huge Brett Favre fan. I remember my stepfather, one day before my 17th birthday, he took me and my little brother to MetLife Stadium to watch the Minnesota Vikings against the New York Jets play. That was the night in which he threw his 500th touchdown pass. I always grew up idolizing Favre. Always wanted to be like him as far as like a quarterback, as far as his off-platform throws, the cannon of an arm. I was a huge Brett Favre fan. Favorite moment from him would have to be the Monday Night Football game against Oakland, which he torched the Raiders that day. At this point, he's a heel because even though I admire and I respect all of his credentials, but at the same time, it's hard for me to look at him the same given what has transpired. I mean, the Jen Sturger situation, in my opinion, he got a pass. The Mississippi welfare thing, again, Brett Favre was accused of stealing welfare funds in Mississippi, the poor state in this country, United States of America. And he's one of the wealthiest people. Brett's over $100 million. And also, too, I also want to make it clear, because there are going to be some idiots who will say, well, you of course, you're going to say Brett Favre is a heel because, again, he's supporting President Donald Trump. Anyone who tries to make that argument, bullshit. Because we've talked about Undertaker and we've talked about Kane. They are supporters of Donald Trump, too. And even though I don't agree with their political viewpoints or standpoints, at the end of the day, they're good human beings. They have integrity. So before anyone who wants to use that as an example, because I'm sorry, BRF or Champ, because there's going to be people out there who are going to use that. No, I will not.
Yeah, and you have a point. Stop taking the easy way out. I'm gonna just be real with you. There's a lot of guys who support Trump, who support the President Trump. Let's talk about his real moniker and his real title. There's a lot of guys who support President Trump that, guess what? We still listen to their music. We still adore them. Guess what? Although we may disagree, I still listen to Snoop Dogg's music. I still watch his Instagram page. Nelly as well. I mean, Undertaker, Kane. Hell, Mike Tyson.
Well, I know why Mike Tyson defended.
But Mike Tyson, Mike Tyson.
Yeah, I know, but that's because again, there's gonna be fools out there that are gonna say, "Well, of course you're gonna say heel because Brett Favre is supporting Donald Trump." No, as we've discussed this in the past with Undertaker and Kane, they are supporters of Donald Trump. Do I agree? No, I do not. But at the same time, unlike Hulk Hogan, I can't accuse Taker and Kane of not having integrity.
Yeah. Look, there's been so many figures that throughout history that have supported opposite political spectrums, and yet they were still adored. I'm gonna give you a prime example. The late great James Brown. What was his greatest song?
It's a
Say it
man's
loud.
world.
Say it
Oh,
loud.
yeah.
You won't finish the rest. Say it loud. So that was his best song, yet he was a supporter of Richard Nixon. Him, Wilt Chamberlain, and Sammy Davis. They were still adored by everybody. So stop taking the easy way out, people. Stop taking the easy way out. The reason why you want to say that is because you want that to be the narrative. You
Thank
want
you.
that to be the narrative. There's been so many people that have been on the opposite side of the political spectrum that guess what? They're still adored by everybody. You think to yourself, damn, how could you do that? But the thing is, it's like, oh, well, I understand to a certain extent. But yeah, there's been so many people on the opposite side of the political spectrum, even within our own community, and we still rock with them. Because guess what? They're not ignorant. They're not doing it out. They're not out here doing things outside of what they're supposed to be doing. And Undertaker and Kane. So guess what? Stop trying to use that as taking you want to take the easy route because you want that to be the narrative. Don't want to be a victim so bad that you end up being a victim. If you put yourself in a position to lose, you might lose, unfortunately. Just leave it at that.
But speaking of which, Favre, boy, as a guy who grew up and admired Brett Favre as a football player, it's hard for me to overlook all the other flaws in his career. And Champ, I would not be surprised. Some would say tweener because of his football, his glory days. And it wouldn't surprise me at all. Would he do the Copper John commercials or the Wrangler jeans commercials? Would surprise me if he still did that? Probably not. But to me at this point, I would say heel because and also the writer, Jeff Pearlman, he wrote a book on Brett Favre, the gunslinger. He unloaded on Brett Favre. He unloaded. If you go on his social media, if you go on his Twitter, go check it out. But Brett Favre, to me, at this point, I would say heel.